Hi there, this is Shola John, and you're welcome once again to Man Making a Difference Every Day. On Man Made today, we're going to talk about vulnerability. There was this businessman who, when he was born, he had a peculiar problem. He had a challenge in reading. He had this case, he was diagnosed, and then he couldn't read. He struggled to go to school. He went to school and he was schooling until about the age of 15 when he had to drop out of school because of this peculiar problem. However, he didn't allow that to stop him. He went ahead and then started business. He had his struggle initially, but he made it. But there was something peculiar about him. He always talked about the fact that he had this peculiar condition, and that whenever he was hiring, whenever he was going into partnership, he was looking for people that were good and strong in the area he has problem. And that was how he continued. He simplified his processes just to be able to get the right message. And as soon as he get the right message, he is connecting with the message, and he is sure that an average customer can connect with the message. How did he become bold that he could talk about his problem? That's what we want to look at today. Vulnerability. Vulnerability is you coming out to show the areas you are weak. It's being in a position where you need attention, you need care. It's putting yourself, it's exposing yourself, exposing your weakness. A lot of men don't find it funny to do. As a matter of fact, a lot of men don't do it. And there are many reasons why men don't do it. I'll mention some of them. One of them is fear of attack. When people who don't love you, when they hear your weaknesses, they could use it against you. They attack you at the point of your weaknesses. And oftentimes than not, when people attack at their weak point, it leads to easy defeat. And so for fear of not being attacked, there is a cover-up. There's an attempt to present yourself as though you are perfect, although you know you are not. Every one of us is struggling with one thing or the other, right? Every one of us, even by personality makeup, if you do an assessment of your personality, you are going to see that you have strength and you have your weaknesses. And so in most cases, men generally, they don't want to open up to their partners. They don't want to open up to their friends. They don't want to open up to acquaintances. Unlike this businessman that I mentioned, who talked about his weakness, hire around his weakness, just to ensure that he is protected. So one of the reasons why men don't like to talk about their weaknesses is fear of attack. Somebody can use it against me. All right? So what do? I pretend as if I'm okay. I show up as though I'm strong. I show up as though I don't have problem. Another reason is because it becomes a tool in the hand sometimes of their partner to control them. That is, you know that this man is so good. If you present any request, if you can only craft it, you will get what you want. And so the man put up a facade, a front that makes it look as though he's unapproachable. He makes himself unavailable, or he makes himself unapproachable. The whole essence is just to see that he is not vulnerable. Sometimes also, men don't want to be vulnerable or don't show their vulnerability because they can be mocked. It can be used against them. People talks in indirect speech, in form of proverb. They say all kinds of things just to get at you because they know that is your vulnerable side. And so instead of letting people know that in these areas you have challenges, we man up, as we call it. We pretend, as we call it. Another reason is because some don't want to be shamed, because it can just be turned to a thing of shame. Oh, how will it be said? that with all my education, I don't know figures? How will it be said, with all my exposure, I don't understand basic geography? How will it be said that with all my wealth, I don't have this? And because of the fact that some don't want to be shamed, they hide their vulnerability. Unfortunately, if you cannot be shamed, you also cannot feel a sense of joy. Brené Brown did a research on vulnerability, and that was one of the fantastic discoveries she made. If you cannot feel shamed, then you can't feel joy. And this is how it happens. When you pretend, when you show up as though you are complete, you don't have problem, it's a problem on its own, because it brings some sort of facade around you. It creates an atmosphere around you where people who relate with you are not genuine. And if you cannot feel the genuineness, if you can't, it's more like if you can't cry with them, you can't laugh with them. Even if you laugh with them, it's going to be a plastic smile. Therefore, vulnerability for men is something we must learn to do. But these are reasons why some men don't do it. Then let's look at why should you do it? Because you are human. You need to show your vulnerability because you are human. Nobody is strong 24/7. When you are weak, you should be able to speak out. When you are disadvantaged, you should be able to find help. A research was carried out in the United States of America, and the Center for Disease Control, they found that the rate of suicide among men is higher. In fact, the first top five professions where people commit suicide are dominated by men, and the percentages of suicide among men is higher than their female counterparts. Why? See, the society has trained us over the years not to speak out. The society has said you must man up, men don't cry. I'm here to disprove that. I know one man that wept. Jesus wept. He was a man. He's a role model to a lot of us. And if he wept, then we are permitted to weep. The point is that nobody is strong 24/7. The only thing is, if you must be vulnerable, know who you are vulnerable to. But you must show your vulnerability at every point in time. Why again should you show your vulnerability? Because you are a product of God that should feel the joy also of living. Oh yeah, mood can swing from 0 to 100 within minutes, within seconds. But instead of keeping your pains to yourself, you should let it out. Oh, some said I've been disappointed over and over again. Guess what? You still need to feel the joy. How do you feel the joy? Until there is a connection. How does the connection come? Until you can be vulnerable. Some time ago, I was facilitating a session on emotional intelligence. And then I began to talk about how to manage relationships. And I began to talk about how we must forgive. People will hurt us, but guess what? You must forgive. And somebody who, a middle-aged man in the workshop told us a story, very pathetic story. Something had happened. He was poisoned by his own brother, and he began to tell the story. It was so pathetic. Some of us shed tears hearing the story, but he survived it with the help of friends. Even when he was able to rally around to give the money to somebody, to a close person, a brother also, he spent the money. For some reasons, he was able to be flown out of the country. He got the help he needed. He's alive today. He's back to his job, although it was a setback for him. And he was saying that he had to still let it go because he can't live with the pain, with the bitterness. At every point, you are going to find yourself being vulnerable. And it is common. It is common. We are human. We have experiences, our highs and our lows. If you want to experience joy, then you've got to be vulnerable. Why should you be vulnerable again? Because your point of experience is also a healing point for some people. Some of the things you are going through is not just for you alone. Some people will see it as a pattern. They are going to look at it and they are going to pick courage from it. The courage to share your experience is part of the healing process. The courage to share your experience is an attempt to deliver someone else from getting into the same pain or from getting into the same problem. Therefore, vulnerability is something we must embrace. Being a man does not mean we are not prone to weaknesses, or we are not prone to falling, or we are not prone to mistakes, or we are not prone to error. The question is, what do you do when you fail? We are prone to failure. What do you do when you fail? Sometimes in my life, many years ago, I had a lot of setbacks. I remember having to write some particular exams for 5 times. It was painful. And then fast forward 14 years later, things had changed. I had forgotten the experience. And then I was going to speak to some group of young people. I remember, I had prepared my note. I was so excited. And out of the blues, I just had this strong feeling within me to share my experience of failure with them as a starting point for the day. And so I began to share how at some point I almost gave up. I just didn't have the courage to continue. I wept for a whole day. I was sharing the experience, how I wish I just died. I was sharing the experience with them. And then before I went into my note, I began to teach what I went for. And you know what? A couple of times that I've had to share that, I've had 1 or 2 persons from the audience connecting with me and telling me about their own story and how that my story has also encouraged them. The most recent one, a guy from Australia was facilitating. It was an employment boot camp, and he was facilitating, and he was talking about how he was out of job because he was suicidal. He was talking about how he was abused. He was talking about how he had to begin to fend for himself at a very tender age, and he was responsible for his younger ones. And at that point also, I contributed, and I share my own story. I shared the story of pains I have been through when I lost my mother. I shared the story with the group, and by the time I was done, I saw people were happy because I had facilitated in that group before without sharing my story. But now I shared it. They knew the other side of me they have not known before. Going through stuff and overcoming it is not something to be ashamed of. I believe we can share our story. I believe that being shamed or being ashamed is nothing to be afraid of. Here is what I think. When you have been through stuff and you overcome it, you don't get shamed for it. You are a survivor. But if you have done something that is unheard, if you have done something that is wrong, you can feel ashamed because you failed. But even at that, you can pick yourself up, dust yourself. It's a mistake. To mistake means you took the wrong one. You have opportunity to take again, as long as the decision you have taken did not end your life. You only mistook. Now you have opportunity to take another one. As long as the day breaks and you are alive, you can take another decision. As long as the day breaks and you are well, you have opportunity to take again. If you have taken the wrong one, you can drop that and take another. How vulnerable are you? How vulnerable are you to your partner? How vulnerable are you to your friends? How vulnerable are you to your staff? Yeah, there's the fear of them using it against you. But why don't you own your weakness? Why don't you own your failure? One of the things I believe is if you have overcome your painful experience in life, you can share the story. because it's a sign. When you own your weakness, nobody can use it against you. You know, we had this classmate when I was in when I was in secondary school. I won't forget her in a hurry. Whenever she has misunderstanding with you, the first thing she does before she starts insulting you, she's going to tell you, I know that I am not good. I know my father is this. I know my mother is this. She's going to start by insulting herself for first 5 minutes. Then she descends on you. By that time, everything you could use to insult her, she has exhausted it. You have nothing else to use. And that is how we must do when it comes to vulnerability. Own our weaknesses. Oh, yes, I know I'm this. I know I'm this. I know I'm that. And then nobody gets to use that against us. Because when we own it, it's a form of self-awareness. When we are self-aware and we know our limitations, the next thing we begin to do is to find help in those areas. Is to receive support in those areas. And those help are the one that will guide us and serve as shield all around. And nobody easily gets to use that against you. For instance, you know you are very good with idea, but you don't have eyes for detail. So somebody brings a contract to you. Because they know you don't have eyes for detail, they put all form of clauses. And then they bring the contract and they are putting you under pressure to give them an answer. Tell them I need some time. Send it to your lawyer. Let your lawyer read through and give you advice. What you don't have eyes for as details, your lawyer is going to see and he's going to correct. That is what it means to be vulnerable. There has to be some level of self-awareness of my weaknesses, of my strength, of my limitations. And when you own it, nobody can use it against you. I hope this helps. If it does, let me hear from let me hear your voice in the comment section. And if there's any area you are struggling with, please open up, find help, read books, talk to people, see therapists. If there are areas you are not yet healed, please find help. If there are people you are holding grudges against, let go of them. You need to be in a situation where you are sane enough to take quality decision. You need to have a sound mind to be able to be productive and to take quality decision. Until I come your way on Man-Made next episode, thank you for watching and bye for now.